Today we are going to talk all about dialogue. This is when the author shares the exact words that a character said. Using dialogue helps a reader better understand the story and feel like they were really there. They can hear exactly what you heard. I'm going to read an example of a personal narrative called The Happiest Place on Earth. Pay attention for where the author used dialogue to help you understand their experience. Be on the lookout for dialogue tags that let you know someone is speaking. Remember, these are words like said, exclaimed, asked, hollered, whispered, questioned, and we could go on and on. So let's listen for some dialogue.
The happiest place on earth. I can't believe we are actually here, I exclaimed. The feeling of butterflies in my tummy had not stopped since we got out of our car in the parking lot and began walking towards the happiest place on earth. I felt the excitement rise inside me from the bottom of the feet to the top of my head. My family was next in line to hand our tickets to the smiling man in the bright blue and red uniform. Welcome to Disneyland! You are now entering the happiest place on earth, the ticket holder exclaimed. I looked at my sister and she was wearing a grin from ear to ear. As we walked through the turnstile, I stopped to take in my surroundings. There were beautiful flowers carefully planted throughout the entrance. My eyes got wider as I saw thousands of flowers working together to make a giant Mickey Mouse head. I observed as families upon families took their pictures in front of it. Let's go, bud, my dad called out to me as my family walked on in front of me. I hurried to catch up with my family. The giant green iron gates stood open, inviting us in. There were so many things to see. I watched as kids ran up to little white and red carts that were selling colorful Mickey head-shaped balloons. Also, there was a little red and black trolley cart selling gigantic corn dogs. The aroma of buttery popcorn waved under my nose. Next, I saw Goofy and Pluto waving to us as I slowly walked, taking it all in. There were rows of shops that lined the streets, selling toys, candy apples, and stuffed animals from every Disney movie. Suddenly, my eyes saw the most enormous blue, white, and gold castle. It was the castle from Sleeping Beauty. Well, kiddos, where should we go first? Questioned Mom. I glanced at my sister. Her mouth hung open, her eyes as wide open as mine in wonder. Finally, her eyes met mine, and her arms were raised in a shrug. I closed my eyes and pointed blindly to a spot on the map in her hands. I opened them to see where my finger landed. We all exchanged looks and nodded in agreement, with big smiles all around. Lead the way, kiddos, Dad hollered. My sister and I were off before he finished his sentence. We had never been so excited to explore such an incredible place. So there's a few different spots in this story where the author used dialogue to help tell you what was going on. Right at the beginning, they used dialogue as their lead. I can't believe we are actually here, I exclaimed. We talked about writing a lead yesterday and how you could use dialogue. This would make the reader want to know what's going on because they're hearing what someone said, the main character in the story, and they're going to want to know where they are. If we keep looking, I see another set of quotation marks in the third paragraph. Welcome to Disneyland. If I look at our first two examples of dialogue, I want to look for that dialogue tag. So in that first one, I can't believe we're actually here. I exclaimed. This word exclaimed is our dialogue tag. It tells us that the person is saying something and that they're saying it in a very excited way. In our second example of dialogue, the ticket holder also exclaimed, which means our ticket holder is excited too. Which makes sense. They're at Disneyland. We've got more dialogue with the dad. Let's go, bud, my dad called. What would be our dialogue tag in this part? Good, called. is our dialogue tag. Well, kiddos, where should we go first? Questioned Mom. So again, I've got my quotation marks showing me what Mom said. And our dialogue tag is? Good, questioned. She's asking us something. We can also get a clue that she's asking us something because her sentence ends with a question mark. And then our last bit of dialogue. Lead the way, kiddos, Dad hollered. And again, we have an excited dialogue tag. This time, it's hollered. So we know that Dad's kind of yelling.
You might have noticed in that story that the dialogue tags came after the words that the character said. So let's review how to punctuate this kind of dialogue. Hopefully you remember working on this some in the classroom. We use quotation marks to show the exact words that someone said. Think about reading a graphic novel. The words in quotation marks would be inside a speech bubble on a graphic novel. Let's look at a couple examples to see exactly what that looks like.
Let's look at these 3 example sentences and see where we can add our quotation marks and other punctuation. So our first sentence says, I baked some cookies, said Mom. So when we're adding in quotation marks, we want to think about what it is that the character said. So what words came out of Mom's mouth? Good. She said, I baked some cookies. So we would put those words inside our quotation marks. I baked some cookies, said Mom. And this is a sentence. She's stating something. Normally, if it was just I baked some cookies, we would end it with a period. Because we have our dialogue tag after what she said, instead of ending what Mom said with a period, we end with a comma. And we want to put our comma inside the quotation marks. I baked some cookies, said Mom. And then we can put our period at the end of the sentence. Our second example, I love when you bake cookies, I exclaimed. So this time I'm the one talking. And what words came out of my mouth? Good. I said, I love when you bake cookies. So these are the words that I would put my quotation marks around. And if I'm exclaiming something, then I'm saying it in an excited way. And when we're saying something exciting, we end that sentence with an exclamation point. And remember, it goes inside our quotation marks. I love when you bake cookies, I exclaimed. And then I end my sentence with a period. I don't put my exclamation mark at the end of my sentence here because this is the exciting part. I love when you bake cookies. So that's where my exclamation point goes. And our last example, can I have 2 cookies, I asked. Again, I'm the one talking. And what did I say? Good. Can I have 2 cookies? So I put my quotation marks around those words. And I'm asking. That means I'm going to use what kind of punctuation mark? Good. A question mark. And again, this is my question. Can I have 2 cookies? So my question mark goes at the end of this, inside my quotation mark. And then I end my sentence with a period. Can I have 2 cookies? I asked. Let's look at a couple more examples. So which one of these would be correct? Time for school, Mom called. So we want the words Mom said to be inside quotation marks. So what are the words Mom said? Good, she said time for school. So if I look at my first choice, time for school, there's a quotation mark at the beginning, but there's not one at the end. So can this be correct? No. If I look at my next choice, time for school, It's still missing that closing quotation mark. If we look at our third answer choice, time for school. So the words she said are both inside quotation marks. We've got one at the beginning, one at the end. And I notice they have the comma, and it's inside the quotation mark. So this would be a correct way of writing this dialogue.
To add variety to their story, authors also put dialogue tags at the beginning of a sentence, like in this example. She whispered, "Don't wake the baby." Let's look at some examples of this.
So here we've got some examples where our dialogue tags come at the beginning of the sentence. Let's look at our first one. She whispered, "Don't wake the baby." What is it that she's saying? Good, the words coming out of her mouth are "don't wake the baby." So that's the part that we put our quotation marks around. And when our dialogue tag comes at the beginning, we put a comma after that dialogue tag. Notice this time, my comma is with the dialogue tag. It's not inside the quotation. And then our sentence, "Don't wake the baby." Good, that's a statement. It ends with a period. And I want to put this ending punctuation inside my quotation. She whispered, "Don't wake the baby." I asked, "Can I hold the baby?" What is it that I asked? Good, can I hold the baby? So this is what I put in quotation marks. And then remember, we put a comma after our dialogue tag. So after the word asked, I asked, "Can I hold the baby?" And if I'm asking, if it's a question, "Can I hold the baby?" will end with a question mark. And remember, it goes inside the quotation mark. Can I hold the baby? She exclaimed, "Of course you can." So what did she exclaim? Good, of course you can. So we put that in our quotation marks. After our dialogue tag comes a comma. And if she's exclaiming it, what ending punctuation do we need for "of course you can"? Good, an exclamation point. And remember, that exclamation point goes inside our closing quotation mark. So let's look at an example. Which one of these is correct? She asked the class, "Who's finished?" So what is it that she's saying? Good, she's saying "who's finished." So we first want to check and see which one has "who's finished" inside the quotation marks. So A has it, B has quotation marks, and C has quotation marks. So I can't get rid of anything so far. We know we put our comma at the end of our dialogue tag and before the quotation starts. So if we look at A, she asked the class, there's my comma, so that works. B, she asked the class, comma. And C, she asked the class, oh, we're missing the comma here. So we can get rid of answer choice C. So let's go back and look at A and B. Sorry guys, I know you can hear Bandit. Does anyone else have pets at home? It can make working really hard, but we just have to do our best with our remote learning. So let's look at A and B. She asked the class, "Who's finished?" If she's asking, that means it's a question. So her sentence should end with a question mark. So who's finished, period. Who's finished, question mark. So which is correct? Great. B is the correct answer. Great job, guys.
Take some time now to read back through your rough draft. Are there any places where you could add dialogue to make your story more interesting? Think about the experience that you are sharing. Did you say something or did someone say something to you? You can add that dialogue to your story. When you're adding it in, remember, you can use our trick from yesterday and use a Post-it or a strip of paper so you don't have to rewrite your entire story.
So I'm going to take some time right now and look through my writing and see if there's a place where I could add some dialogue. And instead of rewriting my whole draft, I'm just going to put a dot on my Post-it note, and I want to add this right after he lifted his head and looked right at me. I can't believe he's looking at me, I whispered to myself. And so I'm going to put my dot right here so I know they go together, and then put my Post-it kind of close to it. So now I've got some additional dialogue in my rough draft, and I can still see the rest of what I wrote.
Adding dialogue is just one way of adding more detail to your writing. Tomorrow we're going to continue to work on adding details and working on showing the reader and not just telling them what's going on in our story. So I'll see you then. Make sure to hold on to your rough draft so you'll be ready to go.